What's going on, guys? It's Trey here, and welcome to a brand new video. I know I've been teasing some music-related content for a while, so we're going to go ahead and get it started today, and I'm going to talk about some of the best albums from 2024. We'll be looking at three main categories of music: rock/metal, hip-hop, and pop, because those are the three that I listen to the most. I'll give you guys like 4 or 5, maybe even 6 albums from those genres that I really love this year, and at the very end, I'll give you my favorite album of 2024. Disclaimer: I have not listened to every album from this year or ever, so make sure you don't get too mad at me if your favorite record isn't here, and definitely leave it in the comments because I'm always looking for recommendations, and I definitely want to know what you guys liked from this year. So, let's get into it, starting with rock and metal. Hello. What was your favorite album of the year? Really? Okay, first off, I actually have an honorable mention. It's going to be the Fear of Fear EP from Spiritbox. The reason this is an honorable mention is because I believe it came out at the end of 2023, so technically it doesn't count. But I listened to this EP a ton at the beginning of the year, along with their previous album. Such a great collection of crushingly heavy metal songs. If you are at all into metalcore or modern metal music, then you have to check out this EP if you haven't already. Okay, now I have 6 rock albums from this year that I wanted to talk about in this category, and we're going to be starting off with Pearl Jam's Dark Matter. I really do think that this is the best Pearl Jam record since probably 2006's Self-Titled, maybe even before that. Honestly, this almost holds up to the original trilogy of albums. I really do believe that. This album is almost Pearl Jam's swan song. I don't want to say that like I think they can't make another album, but in the lyrics and in the theme of the album, you can tell that they realize that they're not going to be able to do this for very much longer. You know, they're getting older. I'm pretty sure almost every member of the band is in their 60s at this point. There's a lot of really, really great tracks, Wreckage being one. Upper Hand gave me the same feeling as when I heard Black for the first time by Pearl Jam. One of those instrumentals, and especially the way it builds up throughout the whole song and then just hits you right at the end with an emotional finish, just reminded me of hearing Pearl Jam for the first time, and it's rare for a band to be able to do that, so definitely check out Dark Matter. Next up, more 90s grunge/alternative rock icons. The Smashing Pumpkins are back at it with Agori Miori May, I believe that's how it's pronounced. And this is just a great return to form for the original trio. Obviously, Billy's kind of been doing more of an experimental type of deal with the Pumpkins, with a lot of synth-heavy things over the past. But this is like really, they're kind of getting back to, you know, the original trio, hard-hitting, heavy riffs. I saw this comment on one of the reviews. The song Pentagrams off of the record sounds like it's on every Smashing Pumpkins album at the same time. And I had to include that because I just felt like it was so accurate. You know, it has the hard-hitting riffs and great lyricism and interesting percussion. They've always kind of done that in their songs. But also mixes in some of those synth experimental things that they were doing on some of the previous records. And it works. It really works. I think for the most part, this is almost a no-skip album. And an excellent return to form for this trio. Third rock record from 2024 that I really loved, No Name from Jack White. This is an excellent blues rock project, a classic sounding rock record from the White Stripes frontman, and it's just banger after banger after banger, and I just love everything about this record, but really I just love the way it was released the most. He kind of secretly released this. He gave it out with vinyls, I believe. And he knew that people would be like, hey, this is a freaking Jack White record that no one's ever heard. I'm going to put it on the internet. And that's exactly what happened. And that's kind of how he did the release process. Oh, also, the music is excellent. This record sounds like it was recorded by one microphone in the middle of a large room. And I mean that in a good way. It sounds raw as hell. Like, it sounds like you're sitting right there with Jack in front of you playing it for you. And I really love his vocals on this record. He sounds like he is crossing a tightrope and he's constantly swaying back and forth, and somehow he manages to stay on balance and find the melody. A song like Archbishop Harold Holmes, for example, I don't know how he is finding these lyrical melodies and then somehow syncing them back up with the guitar. It's just really impressive. It's chaotic, and it's a really great time, and just a really tight old school rock record that everyone should listen to if you're a rock fan. Okay, here's one you probably haven't heard before. This is the Pale Strangers EP by the Pale Strangers. This was one that I randomly discovered from a song that was recommended to me on Spotify. I believe it was Witches in the Wasteland. And I listened to it, and it sounded a lot like, something that Muse or Royal Blood would put out. Who are these guys? Turns out they have like less than 10K monthly listeners. They just released this year after a long hiatus. And this is just a really great listen. Quick, 5 songs, 14 minutes. And it just gives you those old school Muse vibes / Royal Blood vibes. Number 5 from my favorite new age rock group, The Warning with Keep Me Fed. This album is just a big old collection of heavy rock banger after heavy rock banger. It really doesn't slow down for a second. It is just blood pumping, hard rock in action the whole way through. Some of them are heavier than I've ever heard from The Warning. They've got some, like Sharks, for example. Sharks is my favorite song off this record. That song it sounds kind of like a Linkin Park riff from back in the day. There's definitely some nu metal influence. I definitely heard some Korn influence on some of the breakdowns in this record. And I get that people might not be as impressed with this record as previous ones, but I think this was a great way to break into the mainstream and kind of let people know that they're here as a rock trio and that they've got some really good stuff. Finally, the 6th record I wanted to talk about in this category, from probably my favorite musician ever, Jerry Cantrell's I Want Blood. The Alice in Chains lead guitarist is back at it again with another solo project, his 4th, and I couldn't get enough of this record this year. I thought it was absolutely phenomenal. I think that it brings all of Jerry's influences together into one project that is so crushingly heavy in its emotions, which is just always something that Jerry has done well, whether it be Alice in Chains or his own solo music. He has a great ability to make you feel what he's feeling through the music. I just find that it hits hard when it needs to, it gets emotional and softer when it needs to, it has a great ending track, and I believe that Echoes of Laughter is one of the best songs ever written. And I know that it just came out this year, but if you don't feel something when the bridge hits, then you might as well not even talk to me. But yeah, this album is just filled with amazing riffs, great solo work, great percussion, drumming from Mike Borden from Faith No More, and I believe Duff McKagan is back, as well as Robert Triolo for bass playing in this, which they've worked with Jerry before. That should just goes to show you how respected Jerry is in the music world, that all of these legends come to help with his album. And yeah, once again, he provides another record that I'll be listening to for years to come. So thank you, Jerry. Appreciate it. And you were probably my favorite rock record of this year. All right, let's move on to hip hop. 2024 was a really good year for hip hop, which is good because the previous 2 years were starting to look a little not so good, with a lot of oversaturation of kind of bland, boring, vapid hip hop. You know who I'm talking about. But hip hop has reclaimed its place because of some of these amazing projects. First off, want to mention the Cole mixtapes are now on streaming. J. Cole did not have the greatest of years, but I will say that he did kind of salvage it at the end by getting these on streaming. The Warm Up, The Come Up, and Friday Night Lights. If you haven't heard them before, you should listen to them. There's a reason why they have been so sought after for so long. And he finally gets those on streaming, so good for him. Then, it's Kendrick time. Kendrick just dropped this randomly on like a Monday afternoon because he's freaking Kendrick and he does that. And it went nuts, of course, because he is at a point now, especially after the beef, where he can just do that. You've heard the phrase, Kendrick dropped. Kendrick dropped. Kendrick dropped. That's exactly what I said when I saw it. So it's in our global lexicon now. So just really smart from him to do it that way, with hidden features initially as well. Very cool. And this is more of a mixtape style album than it really is a longer, more conceptual one that he's more known for. And I think it's at the perfect time. It's before the Super Bowl. He needs some bangers to be able to play at the Super Bowl, some new bangers. Obviously, he's got plenty of old school bangers that he'll bust out. But yeah, that's what this album is. For the most part, there's obviously still that Kendrick depth here on songs like Whacked Out Murals, for example, on songs like Gloria, and certainly on a song like Reincarnated, which is one of the best hip-hop songs I've ever heard. I was in full-blown chills mode listening to that. Once I figured out that he was talking, especially at the end, you know what I'm talking about. You've heard it. When he's talking to frickin' God. I mean, how do you even think of that? And how do you execute it without sounding like a complete douchebag? Like, most people that would say that they're talking to God, you'd be like, okay. Kendrick does it, and it just works. It somehow works the way that he set it up with being kind of the devil being reincarnated into all of these different icons of music. Just insane conceptual songwriting. And then obviously you have stuff like Luther and TV Off, which have popped, just gone completely nuts in the streaming world already. I think it was just overall just a big victory lap for Kendrick over a year that it almost belonged to him in the hip-hop world. I don't think anybody that listens to rap this year didn't listen to something Kendrick put out. So just a really impressive year, and I'm super excited for what's coming next in the Super Bowl and potentially the next album. Next up, I've got King of the Mischievous South by Denzel Curry. Denzel Curry is one of my favorite rappers ever, but certainly from the modern age, and once again, he brings it back with more bangers. It's not as emotional and conceptual as something like Taboo or Melt My Eyes, but it has just incredible melodic beats, great verses from Denzel. Denzel steals the show, even though there's a ton of really great features. I think every song besides Got Me Geeked has a feature. Denzel still is the best rapper on the project, and that's with some really, really good features from Kenny Mason, Mexican OT, ASAP Ferg, 2 Chainz. Armani White had a good verse on Wishlist. 2 Chainz is funny because we have allowed 2 Chainz to be 2 Chainz for too long, so now he just does his 2 Chainz thing, which is he repeats the same line over and over again, his one-word verses, and he just vibes on a track. And honestly, I'm here for it. I think it works in this context. Just a different style from Denzel, basically showing like, hey, I can do the melodic stuff, the stuff that's maybe not as hardcore and fast, and I can do it just as well as anybody else. I'm versatile. I'm Denzel Curry, and y'all need to get known, okay? Because Denzel's one of the best. That's just period, okay? I will be not hearing any thoughts on the matter. He is just one of the best right now. Chromacopia, Chromacopia, Chromacopia. There's been a lot of talk in rap this year about the big 3. Obviously, we all know J. Cole christened it in first-person shooter as him, Drake, and Kendrick. Kendrick then shut that down in Like That by saying there is no big 3, it's just the big me. And if we take that at face value, if we say that Kendrick is the GOAT right now, then who's right underneath of him? I think Tyler, the Creator, is in that conversation at this point. He has done plenty enough to be entered into that discussion, and he does it once again with Chromacopia, which is one of his most personal album. It's definitely not even one of them. It's definitely the most personal album he's ever released, because Tyler's definitely been someone who's done characters before and to great success with stuff like Wolf, with stuff like Flower Boy, and Igor obviously being the massive Grammy-winning beast that it was when it released. And he kind of takes the mask off, as he says in the album, as one of the tracks, and gets really personal about how he's feeling. And it's not necessarily the prettiest thing. He's got a lot of issues with paranoia with his fans. He's scared to go outside. He doesn't know if someone's trying to constantly watch him. He has a lot of insecurities about should he start a family, should he, kind of put his career on hold and get personal with someone. There's a lot going on here, a lot to unpack. I couldn't possibly talk about everything in this small segment. He also released one of the hardest hitting songs of the year, Like Him, which if you have ever had any sort of daddy issue, you might relate to that one. So yeah, just a really powerful record. I don't know if it's necessarily my favorite to listen to of Tyler's because of how emotional and deep it gets, but it's really powerful, and I would recommend watching the live performance that he did at Camp Flog Gnaw. It is awesome. So another one that you really need to listen to if you haven't. Next up, I'm going with Dark Times by Vince Staples, and as the title might suggest, this is a dark and sad album. Vince gives you some incredibly bleak lyrics about depression and lost love and losing your innocence and your inner child, and how life gets so dull sometimes as you age. And he's also had issues from where he's came from, being successful and seeing all these people that he knows still struggling, and trying to come to terms with what that means and what he should do about it, and if he should do anything about it. It's really a deep album, despite the fact that it's not super long. It's only about 35 minutes. It's a quick listen. Yet he just is so good at kind of bluntly putting his feelings into words. It's very interesting. It came through very easily for me. I didn't really have to look into it. I understood kind of where he was coming from right away. Vince, like a lot of rappers, tries to paint a picture for you and have it so that you can really see what he was seeing in that moment, and he does it in such a great way. And yet it's over these really catchy, lush piano and guitar beats, almost lo-fi style at times, and you can definitely get some of those songs stuck in your head. I wouldn't recommend it unless you want to be sad all day. Although this album is mostly pretty down, it does finish on a high note with a song like Little Homies, for example, which is kind of like, hey, shit does kind of suck, but we're gonna be alright. We're gonna make it. We're gonna get out of this, stuff like that. So a good vibe at the end, and a lot of people can probably relate to how he's feeling in this album. So that's my number 5 hip hop. I also wanted to quickly mention Doechie's album, Alligator Bites Never Heal. I've only recently gotten into it, so I didn't want to do like a full spiel about it on this section, but it's so good. It's so freaking, she can spit. Finally, you may think you understand me. You may think that you know what kind of vibes I'm into, the deeply emotional cuts, and then you see that my favorite rap album of the year was No Hands by Joey Valance and Bray. This is just such a fun record. They just had so much fun making this, and you can just tell it really comes through on the instrumentals. These guys get compared to the Beastie Boys a lot, and although, yeah, I kind of get it. At the same time, I wouldn't say that the instrumental styles exactly match up. I would say, these guys go for more of an EDM / hyperpop almost infused hip hop style. So not as much rock and roll, although they do have some of it. They also go into the jazz territory, like a song like No Hands, for example. But this is just pure fun. That's all I can really say. You're gonna bop. It's banger after banger. They are just trying to make the most fun song possible every time, with the most fun lyrics possible every time. There is some depth here if you do read into the lyrics a little bit, but for the most part, it's all about good vibes, having fun with the homies, rapping with the homies, making music with the homies, hanging with the homies. Just can't get enough of this record. I've listened to it probably 20 times all the way through. And I think, honestly, Pack-a-Punch has the best feature of the year. Danny Brown's feature in that song is so elite. I absolutely love it. Fuck what you had for lunch. You eat a punch, wash it down with your own blood, then you get a slump. Yep, just one of the best rap records of the year, and it was produced in a bedroom. So, what are you doing with your life? And me, what am I doing? Okay, and finally, we're gonna get into pop music, my third category here. Actually, a pretty big fan of pop music, and specifically my pop girlies. You know, I like my female-fronted pop groups or my female-fronted pop singers. Yeah. But yeah, let's go ahead and kick it off with number 1 here, "Hit Me Hard and Soft" by Billie Eilish. I'm kind of forced to like Billie Eilish because my sister listens to Billie Eilish nonstop. But no, in all seriousness, I actually really like Billie Eilish. I think she's extremely talented. And I think that her and her brother as a duo have put together another incredible record, despite their young age. I think this is the best vocal pop record of the year. I do honestly believe that Billie is probably the best pop vocalist in the mainstream right now. The way that she's able to utilize her voice in so many different ways. And she even says it in interviews that she now feels like she has an instrument with her voice. And you can definitely hear that in the production of this record. They use her voice in the background, in the layers of the production, kind of as another instrumental piece. But this is just another excellent record. The title is kind of speaks for itself. They hit you hard, they hit you soft. They've got these soft acoustic ballads, as Billie is kind of known to do. And they've also got these sort of more synth-heavy, synth-pop style with like these walls of synth at certain points. And I feel like the contrast of those two, the push and pull there is really great. And like I said, vocally, I don't think anyone is touching Billie right now. So yeah, great record from Billie Eilish and Finneas. Next up, from singer-songwriter Maggie Rogers, it's "Don't Forget Me." This is one of the catchiest albums I've heard this year. I think she does such a good job of getting these songs into your head. I've been listening to, I've been thinking about "Coming All Along" since I heard it. Like I've been re-listening to everything that I've listened to this year, and I re-listened to that, and that song has been just right here at the forefront of my brain for like 2 weeks. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing. It's not a bad thing to be catchy as fuck when your music is also really good and has great guitar work and really interesting, unique, emotive vocals and really funny and witty lyricism and some really cool, interesting ballads toward the back half of the album. So I guess that's okay. The guitar work is what really gets me. It's so good on this album. And I feel like the guitar kind of gets lost in pop music nowadays, so I always loved it when I hear it. You know, it's all about bass and drums, and I love those too. But give me some shredding. You can definitely hear some Cranberries vibes and influence here with some of the throwback guitar tones and some of Rogers' vocal deliveries. They're kind of reminiscent of Dolores at times. So you can definitely hear that, maybe some Fleetwood Mac influence as well. But again, just a really, really tight folk pop, soft rocking sort of album, and definitely worth a listen. Third one here. Okay, this one might hurt some people's feelings. I'm gonna talk about "Radical Optimism" from Dua Lipa, and a lot of people are gonna be mad at that because their favorite pop record isn't on here, and they're probably right to be mad about it because this album was definitely disappointing. I don't think that is really that crazy to say, but I will say that even though an album can be disappointing, that doesn't necessarily mean it's bad. And I don't think this is a bad record at all. I think it's a great collection of dance pop records that you can put on at the party and at the when you have a gathering at the club. They go hard. Houdini is a great single. Everyone was kind of into that one. And a song like "Happy for You" at the end of the record is maybe one of her best tracks. It's just that when you come out with Future Nostalgia and then you wait 4 years to release your next project, expectations are going to be high, as they should, and this just didn't quite deliver to that. But yeah, you know, I like Dua Lipa. I really like Future Nostalgia, and I liked this record enough to where I wanted to at least give it some props, even though it was definitely a disappointment and a step down. I still think that it's worth something, and I do think that she'll bounce back from this. She's very talented. I really like this record, even though I know that it's probably not technically as good as some others. Okay, here we go. This is where it gets tough because I've got 2 more records I want to talk about. They're probably my favorite 2 records of the year, and it was really, really hard to pick one out of these 2, but at my number 2 favorite album of the year, I'm going with Brat by Charli XCX. I wanted to put this at number 1 because honestly, I have listened to this album more than any other album this year, front to back. I don't think that that's an exaggeration. And even on playlists, even with songs randomly playing, this is the album I have gone to the most this year, which is so funny because this is not my standard type of music. This is like hyper pop, dance pop, EDM stuff, and that's not necessarily my cup of tea generally. And yet this album just hits so hard in every way. It's so deep and layered, despite being on the surface kind of a club banger album, which it is. There's plenty of that. And yet there's so much depth in the lyrics and in the instrumentals and in the production. They're doing things that I can't even compute in my head. And then you have Charli with some of her best songwriting ever. Kind of, again, I said this earlier in the video, but here again, we have someone bluntly explaining how they feel. Like, it's pretty, like, she's not trying to be vague. Like, it's almost like, this is how I feel, this is who it's about, and this is why I feel that way. And I personally love how transparent it is. You can feel her emotions. You know exactly what she wants and how she feels about herself and how she feels about the people around her and how she feels about the music industry as a whole. And all of these things culminate into just one of the best pop records I've ever heard, simply. Everything about this record hits. It just hits. It hits so hard. And I don't really know how else to describe it other than I'm kind of mad at myself that I had to put it number 2 instead of number 1, because it's definitely been the album I've listened to the most this year. I spent the most time with Brat by Charli XCX. I'm still laughing because I'm a straight white dude. Like, I'm pretty sure I'm technically not supposed to like this music. Well, I guess when I meet Charli, I'll have to just apologize for not being gay. But all joking aside, let's move on to number 1 and the final album I'm going to be talking about today, Imaginal Disc by Magdalena Bay. Do you even understand what this album does to me? I saw a comment about this album that said, "This album is a drug and I am addicted." And I don't think I've ever related to somebody more in my life. I just want to inject this album into my bloodstream directly. Sue me. Like, this project is so good that it's hard for me to put it into words, and I tried to. I have a ton of notes. I'll read some. Best bass and percussion on a pop album in a while. Ethereal. Resetting the standard for mainstream pop. That is kind of a bold claim, because it's kind of bold to claim them as mainstream. However, they are up to about 4 million monthly Spotify listeners, so they're not niche as much anymore. And I feel like this is going to be an influential album going forward for pop music, or at least I hope so. Synth pop, but so much more. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty accurate. It's got psychedelic, it's got prog rock, it's got, jazz fusion at sometimes. It's got a lot of different things. It's got old school pop, like in Cry For Me, which is the next note here, has ABBA influence. That has been my thing this year, is noticing how much pop music takes influence from ABBA. I have probably annoyed my friends and relatives with the amount of times I've been like, ABBA! Death and Romance is one of the best songs ever made. Yeah, you know what? Okay. Don't even need to look at the rest of the notes. I'm correct. I love Mika's unique vocal delivery on the record. I love the walls of synth that sort of suck you in and keep you there. And it's so unique because you never know where they're gonna go with the song. You think you might know, and then all of a sudden Tunnel Vision just turns into a freaking space shooter halfway through. And it's a lot about self-discovery. It's a lot about figuring out who you are, figuring out what your image is and how that contrasts with your perception or who you actually feel like you really are. And I feel like that's a powerful message that has really been hitting home for me recently, trying to figure out my identity and what I'm doing with myself. It hits at the right time for me, as well as being just an excellent record. And I am so excited to see what Magdalena Bay does to follow this up. Honestly, it's going to be tough, but I think that they can do it. But yes, those were the best albums of 2024 that I listened to. If you guys have some albums that I did not include, please leave them in the comments. I really do want to read them and listen to them. So make sure you leave a comment, leave a like, and I will see you guys in the next video. I'm going to be doing more music-related videos and some other stuff, hopefully. So stay tuned for that, and hit the subscribe button. I'll see you guys next time. Peace!